We ask Him for His forgiveness and His qualities of mercy. وَنَسْتَعِينُهُ وَنَسْتَغْفِرُهُ وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شُرُورِ أَنفُسِنَا. And then we go further as a community and as individuals, that whatever weaknesses we have within ourselves, we seek refuge in Allah from them. وَمِنْ سَيِّئَاتِ أَعْمَالِنَا. And whatever weaknesses we have in our own actions, whatever weaknesses our communities have collectively in our actions, we go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We go back seeking refuge in Allah for the weaknesses of the actions of ourselves and of our community. وَمِنْ سَيِّئَاتِ أَعْمَالِنَا مَنْ يَهْدِهِ اللَّهُ فَلَا مُضِلَّ لَهُ وَمَنْ يُضْلِلْ فَلَا هَادِيَ لَهُ. Then we affirm that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives guidance, no one can take that guidance away. When Allah gives His guidance to an individual or to a community, no one can take that away. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows an individual to be shielded from guidance, only Allah can guide them. No person can as well. And only after all of these affirmations as a community do we feel qualified to then say, وَنَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, that we bear witness that there is no one worthy of our absolute love and praise and reliance other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَنَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. And we continue that on with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not leave mankind by itself, but He sends the perfect example in the form of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and we affirm that every single week. Today is a tough Jum'ah. This week is a tough week. And actually the Muslim community as a whole is feeling fear and anxiety, the likes of which we haven't felt in a very long time. And unfortunately the likes of which we feel too often at the same time. There's a lot of fear going around and a lot of anxiety. A lot of us are feeling ungrounded. We feel like the ground is shaking around us and we don't know what the future holds. The idea of takhafu wa tahzanu, fear and sadness, is something that can be said. We read it on each other's Facebook walls. We read it on people's tweets. We read it anytime we're opening up the news media that this is a scary time. But in this moment, I wanted to just give a few reminders before discussing the ayah that I recited after Khutbah al-Hajjah, that this is a time actually not to run away from those feelings of anxiety, but it's actually for us to sit with them and understand them, to talk about them with each other, to come together as communities and process them verbally, and also just by the blessing of each other's presence. And before getting into the ayah of today, what I wanted to go through is actually 5 C's that we can easily remember of what our community should be involved in right now, or what we as individuals should be involved in this trying time. One thing is, we're in a trying time, we're feeling fear and we're feeling sadness. One of the things we should seek comfort in is all of the messengers, alayhim salam, all of them went through moments where they were tested severely and they felt fear and they felt sadness. So we're in their company and we get to practice their sunnah more holistically in these moments. And even in that hardship, there is a bit of ease because we know we are in the tradition of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and all of the prophets that came before him. Allah even says that, did you think you would have iman and it wouldn't be tested? It's a test that we're going through. But in these moments, I'm going to put down first that our response, how we should kind of take this, is we need to recognize that the first C, care, is needed. We need to understand that we're feeling uneasy, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling anxiety, and we need to care for that. We need to recognize this, that we need to address these feelings. If we don't address them and they stay just in our minds, they're going to start manifesting themselves in our bodies as well. We're going to start feeling headaches and shortness of breath. So we need to care for ourselves. Before we can even care for others, we need to care for ourselves. Some of us, that's going to look like, get off of social media, get off of the news cycle for a little bit. Take a day to just reflect. Take a day to just reflect and figure out what is going on, what's some of the language that after that, once that's been done, we need to approach it at a bigger level. And it's the idea of engaging with community. The second C will be community. After care comes community. We don't just process it for ourselves, but we make sure that everyone in the community has the ability to process this properly. So we set up forums together where we can talk to each other and recognize, yes, it seems there's a lot of things we need to make accommodations for. There are a lot of things that we might need to do differently, but we can get through it together because this is a moment for our community to come together as a whole. This is a moment for all of us to unite together and actually empathize with each other. There's blessings in this. The second C is community. Then the next thing I'll add to it is coalition. The third C for us to remember is this is a time to form coalition. We're not the only community that's been affected by some of these fears and some of these anxieties. It's a time to gather together and recognize them together. That we're not the only ones that are fearful and hurting. And actually, we're not the only ones that are going to be a part of the solution. We're not the only ones that are going to be a part of the solution either. There's going to be coalition that needs to be developed and built. And then the fourth C I'll add, this is that things that can't be reactionary, but there needs to be consistency. We need to develop a consistent response, a consistent initiative that allows us to address what has just taken place, that allows us to feel grounded and validate our feelings on a consistent level. And the last C I'll talk about before getting into the ayah that I wanted to share today is compassion. All of this needs to be done with compassion. With the idea that we're not the only ones that are affected, we need to show compassion to ourselves, of course. But also there are many others who are feeling anxiety and feeling fearful. Even the results of what just occurred, we need to be compassionate and recognize that we're not going to use blank labels, that anyone who is responsible for this result is someone we don't work with. No. We have to be compassionate in recognizing there were needs that were expressed, and that came out in the vote that took place a couple of days ago. There were needs that individuals, there were people longing for a good amount of change, and they were hurt for a very long time, so we need to have the compassion of recognizing that that exists as well. And with these 5 C's of self-care, community, coalition, consistency, and compassion, I wanted to share an ayah of the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually addresses a very similar phenomenon that occurred with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And it's found in Surah Ibrahim, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He does in many different places in the Quran, puts forward a metaphor or an example. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا. Haven't you considered or haven't you seen how Allah strikes the example? Not presents the example, strikes the example. There's mushaqqa, there's a little bit more emphasis there. ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا كَلِمَةً طَيِّبَةً. The example of good words or good work. And actually when the scholars went through to figure out what's being talked about is, actually this is talking about how Islam manifests itself in an individual life and in a communal life. Haven't you seen how Allah presents the example of good work? كَشَجَرَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ. It's like a good tree. أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. Its roots are grounded, and its trees reach for the heavens, reach for the skies. When talking about the mission of our belief, it's actually planting a tree. And some wisdoms we can take away from that is, a tree takes a long time to root itself in the ground before you see the effects of it above the earth. Its roots are firm and vast. It takes a long time for this to occur. And it takes seasons before you start seeing its branches reach for the sky. The effect of Islam on our lives is supposed to be just that. It roots us and grounds us to stand for ourselves. وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. I'm not going to be able, because we started a little bit late, I'm not going to be able to go in as depth as I wanted to. But فَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ, and you see that its branches reach out. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then continues, تُؤْتِي أَكُلَهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهَا, that the fruits that it gives, they're around all of the time. كُلَّ حِينٍ, they're all the time ready and accessible for people. It doesn't ask, oh, are you Muslim? These fruits are only for Muslims. A tree doesn't ask that. A tree is readily available to give to whoever wants to be around. The shade of a tree isn't reserved for a specific type of person. No, it provides shade to whoever passes. The fruits of a tree are available at all times of the year, not that only when I'm giving charity, that's the only time good comes from me. No, at all times, the works of this person, the Islam of this person is available to give good. And actually, if we dig a little bit deeper, there's a lot of wisdoms to be found here. A tree isn't like grass. You don't have to plant it every year. You plant it once, and then you maintain it. It doesn't last one season. It lasts seasons and seasons and seasons. It doesn't last only a summertime. It can withstand winter. It can withstand snow. It can withstand rain. And it's supposed to do that. And the person planting a tree many times has the understanding that I might not be able to benefit from this completely, but my children will. Their children will. And there's trees that exist for hundreds of years where grandparents ate from it and now great-grandchildren are eating from it because it was planted and maintained. That's supposed to be the attitude of a believer. When we talk about the 5 C's we just talked about, there's going to be a moment where it rains and we don't see sun for 2 or 3 days. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't tell us to plant grass. Allah told us to plant a tree. We might be seeing ourselves surrounded in a desert certain times, and nothing is going to change. This is a very difficult area to be in. But we recognize Allah expects for us to plant our one tree. And if all the people around us are planting their one tree, a desert can transform into an orchard. But it takes time and it takes consistent effort. And you don't lose hope when suddenly this season my tree didn't give as many fruits as I wanted it to. Next year it will. It will get there. My tree's not as high as it needs to be. Well, it takes time. My tree seems to be moving around a little bit. There might be something wrong with its roots. We need to address its roots. Many parallels can be found in this. And what I wanted to conclude with before we start the second portion of the khutbah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents this example actually in Surah Ibrahim of the Quran. The Prophet Abraham, who if there was one person who had an entire nation that was against him, it was Ibrahim alayhi salam. But what did he do? He preserved his tree. He planted a seed that developed into his 2 children, that developed into a beautiful community, that developed into a family of prophets after him. And if we want to talk about the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it's the same. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke certain good words. And those words, he maintained those people that accepted those words. And actually, when there was a lot of oppression against Rasulullah in his community, he surrounded them and he would gather them together in Dar al-Arqam, a small community where people would talk about their anxieties and their fears, where they came up with the plan that, you know, persecution is getting difficult. Can you protect me? Can you protect me? Can a group of us go to another area because we don't feel safe here? Accommodations were made. But it was this understanding that we're planting trees right now. And it's going to take a long time sometimes for the fruits of those trees to be seen. But we're not in it for a short term. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually finishes this ayah. Allahu amthal lin-nasi la'allahum yatadhakkarun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finishes this ayah that this example is being given by Allah lin-nasi, for all of mankind, because it should be recognized that your trees don't just affect your own community. Your trees affect all of mankind. And it continues on even further, yatadhakkarun. And so that you may constantly remember. Again, there's mushaqqa in it. Not that, because this is something that's easy to forget. when suddenly our plans don't go the way we want them to, we lose sight of the big picture. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, يَتَذَكَّرُونَ, so that you can be people that are constantly reminded of this. Because it's something very easy to forget. When winter comes, it becomes very easy to forget what was the actual goal of our tree. Why did we plant this in the first place? It becomes difficult. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the wisdom to recognize what our anxiety means for us and give us the wisdom of understanding things that we can change and things that we cannot change. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us a people that builds a community that constantly empathizes with our own community and empathizes with communities outside of ourselves. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be a people who understand what it means to plant a tree and the responsibilities therein, that we plan for long-term change, that we plan for long-term change within ourselves and within our communities around us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from any harm that might be in our future. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the evil thoughts that might exist in our own minds. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to engage with each other and understand each other as we go through trying times, and allow us to be amongst those that said, we follow the sunnahs of the prophets before us. When we were in a tough time, we doubled down in our understanding of Iman, that Allah is in control of everything, and that helped us get through these trying moments. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. I wanted to conclude with just a few reminders. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in many different ayat, one of the most significant being in Surah Al-Baqarah, in which the believer is one that trusts in the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when things occur, we expect the best from our Lord. Allah is as we see Him. Allah reminds us that there might be something you love, but it's bad for you. And there might be something you hate, but there's good in it for you. We trust that everything that happens through the lens of Allah's mercy and Allah's justice. And our Iman allows us to be confident when things when things happen that aren't necessarily part of our plan. We understand, I have my own plans, but Allah has a plan, and Allah is the best of planners. There is good in this. There's a moment for me to grow in this. We have ayat that talked about إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, that with every difficulty there is an ease. Not after a difficulty, but in that difficulty there is an ease. And it is up to us to figure out how we're going to respond to that difficulty and gain that ease that exists within it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not put a people through a trial that they don't have the potential to grow from. And we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be a community that rises up to challenges that are presented forward to us. And I wanted to share just one moment. The biggest tragedy that ever befell this ummah, actually occurred. And a lot of the feelings that companions at that moment were feeling are similar to some of the feelings that some of us are feeling. The greatest tragedy that ever took place in this ummah was the passing of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was so beloved to his community that when he passed, people literally didn't know what to do next. The one that they had loved, they relied on his smile to get them through the day. They relied on his guidance to let them know what they should do next as a community and even as individuals. He passes away, and the Sahaba around him, his companions, are in chaos. They don't know what to do next. But it takes companions like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, like Ali radiallahu anhu, to mourn They go and visit the Prophet ﷺ's body. They mourn